Rain is falling on a column of 20,000 people, and one man in it is not what he appears to be. He rides near the front, close enough to Varus to be trusted with the day's decisions. He wears a citizen's ring. He speaks Latin the way Roman officers speak it, without hesitation, without accent. His name, at least the name Rome gave him, is Arminius. In a few hours, he is going to destroy 3 legions using nothing but what Rome itself taught him. This is not a story about a barbarian ambush. Rome did not lose to a stranger. It lost to a graduate. To understand what happens in this forest, you have to go back 20 years to a peace treaty and 2 frightened boys. Germania, early in the reign of Augustus. A Cheruscan chief named Segimer has just lost a war he could not win. Rome offers him a settlement, and the price is his sons. Arminius and his brother Flavus are handed over as hostages, not prisoners exactly. Something stranger, living collateral. Rome does this constantly along its frontiers. Take the sons of defeated nobles, raise them inside the empire, and send them home years later, fluent in Latin, trained in Roman drill, and quietly loyal to the system that raised them. It usually works. The boys are taken to Rome. They learn the language. They learn marching patterns, supply logistics, the command structure of a legion, not as tourists, but as future officers. Arminius serves in the Roman auxilia, the provincial troops who fight for Rome in exchange for citizenship at the end of their service. He fights well enough to be noticed. Around the year 4, he takes command of a Cheruscan detachment, fighting for Rome in the Pannonian Wars on the Balkan Peninsula, one of the ugliest counterinsurgency campaigns of Augustus's reign. He survives it. He excels in it. By the time he returns north, Arminius holds something almost no Germanic noble had ever held: Roman citizenship, and the rank of equestrian, a tier of Roman society reserved for knights, one step below senator. Historians closest to the events, men like Velius Paterculus, who served in the same military system, describe him afterward as a prince of his nation who had attained the dignity of equestrian rank. Rome had not just tolerated Arminius, it had built him, and it was about to hand him command over the very trust it would need to survive. By the year 7, Publius Quinctilius Varus arrives in Germania to finish what Rome started. He is not a battlefield general in the mold of the men who conquered Gaul. He is an administrator, a man who governed Syria before this posting, comfortable with taxation, courts, and provincial law. Augustus has decided Germania is ready for the next phase, not conquest, but conversion, turning a military frontier into a Roman province, with Roman courts settling Germanic disputes and Roman tax collectors walking through Germanic villages. Here's the part worth sitting with. Varus is not a fool. He is doing exactly what worked in a dozen other provinces. Gaul took this path. Syria took this path. The formula was simple: station legions, install administration. Let the next generation grow up, speaking Latin and paying taxes, and within 30 years, nobody remembers wanting anything else. The formula assumes something, though. It assumes there is no one on the inside who remembers exactly how thin the formula actually is. Arminius becomes one of Varus's most trusted men, not just a soldier, an advisor, a source of local intelligence, a bridge between the governor and the tribes he is trying to govern. Most mornings, it is Arminius who tells Varus which roads are safe that week, which chiefs can be trusted, which villages are quiet enough to leave alone. When a Roman citizen with equestrian rank and a record of loyal service gives you that information every day for 2 years, you stop double-checking it. You start building your decisions on top of it. This is worth pausing on, because it explains everything that follows. Rome's entire system for pacifying conquered peoples depended on trusting men exactly like Arminius, elevated locals who had proven their loyalty through Roman service. It had worked with governors across the empire for generations. The system was not broken. It simply had never been tested against someone who spent that trust deliberately, patiently for years, waiting for the one moment it would matter. And Arminius was patient. While advising Varus by day, he began building something Varus never saw. A coalition. Germanic tribes north and east of the Rhine had spent generations fighting each other as often as they fought Rome. The Cherusci, the Bructeri, the Marsi, rivals as much as neighbors. Uniting them against a common enemy was, if anything, a harder problem than beating a Roman legion in open battle. Arminius solved it quietly, tribe by tribe, meeting by meeting, while Varus continued to treat him as the most reliable man in the province. By the late summer of the year 9, the coalition was ready. Varus was not. So here is the pattern worth holding on to before we go further. Rome trained Arminius to fight like a Roman, think like a Roman administrator, and speak with a Roman's authority. Every one of those gifts was about to be used against the men who gave them. If you're finding this as unsettling as I did researching it, that's the right reaction. Hit subscribe, because the next 15 minutes cover exactly how a trusted advisor turns years of patience into 3 days that erase a Roman army. Now watch what happens when the column actually starts moving. In September of the year 9, Varus decides to move his army back toward winter quarters on the Rhine. It should be routine. 3 legions, the 17th, 18th, and 19th, marching a well-used route they have marched before. Roughly 20,000 soldiers, alongside auxiliary units, wagons, pack animals, and a long trailing column of women, children, and servants who had attached themselves to the army the way civilians always do, around a settled frontier force. All told, some estimates put the number closer to 30,000 people moving together. Then Arminius brings news of an uprising. A tribe to the north is in revolt. He tells Varus, nothing serious, nothing that can't be handled, but it needs attention. And Arminius knows the terrain and the local chiefs better than any Roman officer in the column. He asks permission to break off with a small escort, gather Cheruscan auxiliaries, and rejoin the main force in a few days. Varus agrees. It is worth being honest about why this decision has survived 2,000 years as a case study in misplaced trust. It was not stupid. Given everything Varus knew about Arminius, the citizenship, the rank, the years of loyal service, there was no visible reason to refuse. That is the entire point. Betrayal built on genuine trust doesn't look like a mistake in the moment. It only looks like one afterward. Arminius leaves. He does not return with reinforcements. He returns with an army. Meanwhile, Varus adjusts the column's route to respond to the supposed uprising. And this decision moves the army into terrain nobody would have chosen for a fighting force. A narrow, uneven corridor near a place called Kalkriese, hemmed in by a hill on one side and a bog on the other. Dense forest presses close on both flanks. The legion's greatest strength, their ability to form tight, disciplined battle lines on open ground, becomes useless here. There is no open ground. There is only a line of exhausted people stretched 7 or 8 miles long, moving single file through mud. Then the weather turns. Rain begins falling. Hard and constant. Wind pushes through the trees. Cassius Dio, writing generations later from Roman records and testimony, describes soldiers struggling just to keep their footing, let alone hold formation. Wagons sink into softened ground. Shields, built to turn a blade, grow heavy with rainwater until soldiers' arms start shaking just holding them level. And somewhere ahead, hidden along the high ground, Arminius's coalition has already built a defensive earthen wall, a structure Roman archaeologists would not find and confirm for another 1900 years. Buried at Kalkriese, waiting, the attack begins not as one battle, but as a rhythm. Germanic warriors strike from the tree line, throw javelins into the packed column, and vanish back into the forest before the legions can organize a response. Then they strike again, somewhere else along the 7-mile line, over and over. The Romans cannot chase what they cannot see, and they cannot form the wall of shields that has won them 100 battles. Because there is no room in this corridor to form it. Here's the part that makes this different from a normal ambush. Arminius is not guessing what the legions will do. He knows their formations because he was trained inside them. He knows how long it takes a column to react to an attack on its flank because he drilled that exact maneuver as a Roman officer. Every weakness the Germanic coalition exploits over the coming days is a weakness Arminius identified in advance, using knowledge no outside enemy of Rome had ever possessed. By nightfall of the first day, the column has already lost cohesion. Some units manage to build a fortified camp. Most do not. And the storm has not finished with them yet. The second day is worse than the first. The column pushes forward into the pass at Kalkriese, the ground narrowing further between the hillside and the bog. And this is where the earthen wall waits, the one Arminius's coalition built in secret, while he still wore a Roman ring and advised a Roman governor. Warriors pour over it into the flank of the column, and, for the first time, the attack is not a hit-and-run raid. It is a coordinated strike against the weakest, most exposed section of the line, placed exactly where Arminius knew Roman formations would be thinnest. This is the moment worth returning to. Remember the man riding beside Varus in the rain? The one with the citizen's ring and the flawless Latin. Every decision the Germanic coalition makes over these 4 days traces back to what that man learned inside the Roman military system. Not folklore about barbarian ferocity, not superior numbers, but inside knowledge used with total precision. Somewhere in the chaos of the second or third day, whatever illusion Varus still held about his most trusted advisor comes apart completely. There is no dramatic confrontation recorded, no final conversation. Just the slow, horrifying arithmetic of a governor watching his legions die, in exactly the pattern his own trusted officer would have known how to create. By the 3rd and 4th days, what remains of the Roman force is barely an army anymore. Cassius Dio describes a final storm on top of everything else, wind and rain preventing the survivors from even standing steadily, let alone fighting. Some units try to burn their remaining wagons and push forward with only what they can carry. It doesn't save them. Varus, facing capture, falls on his own sword rather than be taken alive. A decision Roman commanders reserved for only the most complete kind of defeat. 3 legions, the 17th, 18th, and 19th, effectively ceased to exist. Their standards, the eagles that represented the identity and honor of a Roman legion, are taken as trophies. Historians still debate the exact death toll, but even the most conservative estimates put it near 15,000. When Roman soldiers finally returned to the site years later under Germanicus, they find the forest floor scattered with bones and weapons, and skulls fixed to the trees, left as a message no one in Rome could misread. This is not only a story about a lost battle. It is not only a story about a bad decision on a rainy road. It is a story about what happens when the very system an empire uses to secure loyalty becomes the training ground for the person who ends that loyalty for good. The pattern is not unique to Rome. Any institution that survives by absorbing talented outsiders, training them, elevating them, trusting them with real authority, carries the same quiet risk. The intelligence agency that trains the double agent. The corporation that promotes the executive who later dismantles it from inside. The risk is never the stranger at the gate. It is the graduate who already knows where the gate is weakest. Rome did not simply withdraw and forget Germania. Augustus, receiving the news in Rome, reportedly struck his head against a door and cried out for his legions back. A detail historians have repeated for 2,000 years, because it captures something true, even if the exact words are uncertain. Years later, Germanicus led punishing campaigns back across the Rhine, defeated Arminius in open battle more than once, and recovered 2 of the 3 lost eagles. Rome could still win. What Rome could not do was hold. The cost of permanent control east of the Rhine, measured against what Teutoburg had already shown was possible, no longer made sense to an empire that had other frontiers to manage. The Rhine became the boundary, not because Rome lost the will to fight, but because Rome finally understood the price of trusting a system it could not fully see inside. So, what do you actually take from a forest in Germania 2,000 years old? First, the simple truth. Rome did not lose to an enemy it failed to understand. It lost to an enemy it built, educated, and trusted completely. And the defeat says less about Germanic warriors than it does about the limits of loyalty bought through training alone. Second, the truth that matters closer to home. Trust built on shared systems, shared training, shared language, feels like the safest kind of trust precisely because it looks earned. Varus had every reasonable justification for believing in Arminius. That is exactly why it worked. Third, the one that stays with you. This is not a story about a machine failing, or a wall breaking, or a single bad decision on a rainy morning. This is a story about what happens when the very thing that makes someone trustworthy, deep, intimate knowledge of your system, is the same thing that makes them capable of destroying it, if the moment ever comes and they choose to. Teutoburg didn't end Rome, but it drew a line the empire never crossed again, and it left behind a question worth sitting with long after the battle itself is forgotten. How do you ever fully trust someone you trained to be just like you? Which twist in this story hit you hardest? The years of patience, or the moment Varus realized what his own trust had built? Tell me below. Rome created its own worst enemy that day, and the forest never gave the legions back.